Something is moving out there. American tanks.
No, something is wrong.
Hold steady. Wait for the signal.
That is not a cannon.
What followed had never been seen before.
Fire! Inside! Ah! Fall back! Now! Did you see that? Unknown weapon! Spreading fire!
This changes everything.
The balance of the battlefield was beginning to shift.
They looked like ordinary tanks until they fired.
New tanks are working.
Repeat, they are working.
We were not prepared for this weapon.
Dear.
Move up! Stay behind the tank! Seal it! Seal the door!
The mathematics of battle were changing. Months earlier,
A weapon was being built in secrecy.
They are using fire! Fall back positions!
We can break through Essence 8, through!
Day 2 on Iwo Jima! A new kind of weapon!
Bring all flame tanks forward!
In that moment, everything changed. was not just a tank. It was the weapon that would change Iwo Jima.
We will not defeat them at the shore. We will make them pay for every step.
Yes, General. Yes, General.
His mission was not victory, but cost.
Saipan. Peleliu. The Philippines.
Old tactics had failed.
No more charges.
Miles of tunnels.
7 levels deep.
Hold still.
Line secure.
Even the air was engineered.
Enough for months.
A fortress beneath the island.
On the surface, the island looked shattered. Underneath, it was still alive.
Open! 3 seconds only!
Every approach was measured. Every open space was already in someone's sights. The northern plateau would hold the heart of the defense.
Between the strongholds, reserves could move unseen.
Concrete 4 feet thick. Steel buried inside stone.
Every important height had already been turned into a fortress.
Close it! Close it! Close it now!
There was no safe line of advance, only less fatal ones.
Even the rock was lying. Beneath the guns, the island could heal itself.
Northern sector reports, ready! Get this to the commander now.
Food, water, ammunition. Enough to keep the fortress breathing.
When they land, Suribachi speaks first.
Beach grid marked. We wait.
The north was where the island meant to kill.
Most of the defenders were not on the surface at all.
South if they break there. North if they survive the beach.
Nothing on Iwo Jima was accidental. Not the tunnels. Not the silence. Not the killing ground.
From the sky, it looked broken.
From below, it was ready.
It will be difficult, but manageable.
For 74 days, the island was hammered.
After this, the island should fall in 5 days.
Once least. The bombardment was enormous. The result was far smaller than anyone hoped.
Most of the fortress was still there, waiting.
8 square miles of rock had been turned into a fortress that defied ordinary war. Iwo Jima was not an island to be taken by speed. It was a fortress built to consume every yard in blood.
Months before the invasion, the answer began, far from Iwo Jima.
Colonel George Unmarked had been given a problem conventional weapons could not solve. We need something that can reach inside the fortress. Chemical Warfare Service wants results, Colonel.
The challenge was not firepower alone. It was getting firepower into places guns could not reach.
In the Hawaiian heat, a secret workshop was about to change the battle for Iwo Jima.
We are going to build the weapon they do not expect.
Nothing about the building suggested that history was being made inside it.
The initial team was small. Just enough men to begin, not enough to finish alone.
I need CBs, mechanics, men who can build under pressure.
The Seabees came with the reputation of men who could build anything.
Tell us what it has to do, we will figure out how.
We know where these bunkers are. You could kill us, Graham. There's no.
Oh! You ask for parts, we keep them moving.
Army chemistry, Navy fabrication, Marine battlefield experience. The team was as unusual as the weapon it would create.
They were united by one purpose: build a weapon that could burn the defenders out of their caves.
At the center of the project were 2 men whose names would never become famous.
It has to reach farther, and it has to survive the first shot.
They had seen men die trying to take positions artillery could not break.
The problem is not how much fire we have. The problem is where the enemy is hiding.
The new machine had to force the hidden defender into the open or destroy the space around him.
The pace became relentless.
This cannot just work in a shop. It has to work under fire.
They were not just making fire. They were designing how fire could win a bunker war.
Others had tried before. None had solved the whole problem.
Portable flamethrowers worked, but the men carrying them often had to get too close. Their range was too short for the island's larger killing zones.
That is not enough time in front of a bunker. Too many failures. Not in combat.
The first conversions proved the concept. They did not solve the battlefield.
Better, but still too short.
The lighter tank had shown promise. It had also shown what would get a crew killed.
If this weapon gets in close, the crew needs real armor.
They found 8 M4A3 Shermans ready for conversion. This one can take the hit and keep moving. Your neck, go. Armor was not a luxury. It was what made the possible.
It had already proven itself in war. Now it would be asked to become something else. 8 tanks. Enough to test an idea in battle. Enough to change it too.
Take out the old heart. We are building a new one. If the gunner can aim it like a cannon, he can fight with it like a cannon.
Once the Sherman was chosen, the secret project became a race.
They did not invent from nothing. They combined what already worked and removed what did not.
We take the reach, not the weakness. This ignition sequence is cleaner. Keep it.
Even enemy design became raw material in the search for a better weapon.
They worked in rotations, slept beside the equipment, and began again.
If it is going to burn there, it has to survive being built here.
Piece by piece, they built something no one on Iwo Jima had ever imagined.
Push it higher. It has to reach farther than anything before it. "150 yards.
The mixture had to travel, ignite, and remain effective on impact. That is enough to matter in combat.
Aim it exactly as you would the cannon.
If it takes a hit, it must not turn into a coffin.
They would look like ordinary Shermans until the moment they opened fire.
It still wore the shape of a Sherman, but it was no longer the same machine.
The Japanese had built a fortress underground. In Hawaii, Americans quietly built the machine that could turn that fortress into a trap. February 10, 1945. The landing had begun, but the island was not giving way.
This ground is swallowing us! She is digging in! I cannot get traction! Find that gun! Find that gun!
By nightfall, the beachhead had advanced too little and paid too much.
We hit the island all that time, and it is still shooting back.
The second morning brought no relief, only a clearer view of the problem.
Ahead of the 21st Marines, 3 pillboxes had locked the field into a trap. Get down! We cannot cross this!
Weeds are feeding men into concrete doctrine.
Each bunker covered the others. Together, they closed the road.
Pull him back! Pull him back! Pull him back!
In less than 2 days, the cost was already severe. Request immediate support from Special Flame Tank Section.
At 14:20, Tank 431 entered the battle. We get one surprise. Make it count.
The tank did not come straight on. It came like a hunter, using the terrain.
Another tank. Let it come closer. Come on, just a little closer. Hold until it enters the line. Driver, easy! Keep us angled! 125 yards.
Inside the tank, 5 men prepared to test whether the machine would work under fire.
Holding steady, Sergeant! Watching the flanks. £300, holding clean. Target set. No waste. First box, first burst.
The entire project now rested in a single moment.
Gunner, flamethrower, pillbox! Fire!
The first burst crossed the ash like a weapon from another war.
Inside concrete built to resist shells, the defenders found themselves fighting the air itself.
Rear door! Rear door! Hold the exits! Let the tank through the opening!
A position that had held for hours collapsed in moments.
That was no shell. Prepare the anti-tank gun. Fire! Hit on the front. We are still in it. Stay on target.
That was the difference armor made. The weapon survived long enough to matter.
Target 2 engaged.
The bunker did not explode. It simply stopped functioning as a fortress.
Move while it is burning! Move now!
2 were down. The 3rd was the harder problem.
That rock is shielding the opening! Driver, forward! We take it at 80 yards! Now! Close in! Infantry on the front! Firing! They are on the rear! They are on the rear! Traverse all the way! Burn the rear approach! 3rd box hit!
In 2 hours, the regiment gained what had seemed impossible the day before.
Flame tanks effective. Repeat, flame tanks effective.
Bring the rest forward! We have found the answer!
For 2 days, the Marines had struggled to open the road. In a few hours, a new tank had made the whole front begin to move.
Within 6 hours, all 8 flamethrower tanks were in action.
Right, sir!
Flame support effective in the east sector.
The battle was no longer infantry against concrete. It was armor creating openings for men to survive.
Watch the exits! The tank opens the hole! We finish it! That one is just another Sherman!
Flame became more than a weapon. It became a signal to move.
For the first time, the line was moving in more than one place.
This changes how we attack!
Near East Boat Basin, another crew began developing a method of its own.
Hold until it comes directly at us!
The crew called it corkscrew and burn.
Keep rotating! Do not give them the same angle twice! They missed them! They missed those!
The pattern was simple: keep moving, deny the shot, then burn the opening.
4 positions neutralized in the basin sector.
Remember the pattern! Let the tank turn! Move when it burns! Another crew pioneered a second method, one that would shape the rest of the battle. That thing is eating shells all day. Burn it first! Keep their heads down! Move! Tato! Move! Charges on the entrance! Keep them off the side slit!
Burn, breach, clear. A new grammar of assault was being written in real time.
Charge away!
This was more than firepower. It was a system.
At Suribachi, one tank would reveal an effect even more powerful than destruction.
Wait! Let it come! Hold here! They can see us! Good! Short burst! Let them see it! Back! Move to the rear tunnel! They are running! They are running! They are actually running!
The weapon did not just destroy fortifications. It broke the will to stay inside them.
They are giving it up before we even touch the bunker!
No more frontal push without flame support.
Back up. 50 yards! Ahead, Kurt! Not closer! Back off! You will cook behind that thing! Do not waste shells on that bunker. Mark it for the flame tanks. We do not go on the first shot. We go when the bunker stops answering. We wait for armor. No one runs into concrete today.
In hours, improvisation was becoming doctrine. Tank, infantry, engineer, observer.
A new language of assault had arrived.
47 positions destroyed or neutralized.
Where the flame tanks operated, Marine casualties dropped sharply.
In sectors that had barely moved, the line suddenly advanced hundreds of yards.
That tank just saved us a platoon.
In some sectors, the tanks achieved victory before they even fired.
From now on, those tanks are part of the plan.
It works. God help me, it works.
This may be the best support weapon we have on the island.
Those tanks become priority targets. All anti-tank guns shift accordingly.
New orders! Ignore other targets if the flame tanks appear. もし砲が仕留めきれなくてもね、お前たちがやるのだ! If you cannot stop the armor, stop the eyes. Which one, Ray? Which one is the special tank? Which one is it? Which one is it?
The enemy had recognized the danger. They still could not reliably see it coming.
On February 23rd, one image would become famous. Another battle would decide the island.
The flag rose over Suribachi, but the hardest fighting was still ahead.
In the north, there were no symbols, only fortresses. Hill 382 was not just high ground. It was the cornerstone of the northern defense.
It is firing from everywhere!
By now, the special tanks were no longer an experiment. They were the key.
One moment would become legend. the other would win the battle.
They have found a weakness in the fortress.
Every hour, the Americans adapted faster than the defenders.
We trained for artillery, not this.
The tanks had changed the battle. The question now was whether the Japanese could change fast enough.
The flame tank did not just destroy bunkers.
At Hill 382, the flame tanks met one of the island's hardest tests.
Hold for the lead tank. The lead tank is exposed! Track is gone! We are stuck, not finished! Keep firing!
Unable to move, the tank turned itself into a shield of fire.
They are holding the whole hill open for us!
The defenders had started adapting too.
It is holding! The plate has taken it!
Keep it on there. The metal is starting to give.
Stay on it! Do not cut off!
What could not be penetrated could still be deformed.
The defenders had found a counter. The Americans had already found its weakness.
The flame did more than force men out. It began tearing the fortresses open.
There is another entrance under that ledge!
Shells had scarred the concrete. Heat began to break it.
Munitions inside! Stay low! Use what the fire exposed. Seal every opening. Watch the fresh cracks. That is where they will try to come out.
The flame tanks were no longer just destroying targets. They were revealing the island.
With each burn, the fortress gave away another secret.
Fuel is dropping fast, Sergeant. We have done enough here. We need fuel before the next lane. Even the best tank could only burn for so long. We need more support over here. Cover the lane! The flame tank is pulling back!
Refueling did not take minutes. It took time the battlefield rarely wanted to give.
When the tanks paused, the defenders breathed again. We have one tank and 3 problem. Choose the worst bunker. The flame tanks were powerful. They were not magic. The tank cannot get through there! Where the tanks could not go, men still had to. If the tank cannot reach them, I will. We hold here! He goes on! We have your flanks! Go! The island kept presenting ground no machine could solve alone.
Even in the age of machines, the battle still demanded men willing to walk into the fire.
The tanks were decisive. The men on foot were still indispensable.
$70,000 gallons in 7 days.
By the end of the first week, the flame tanks had changed the arithmetic of the battle. Victory here depended as much on hoses and drums as on courage.
Every gallon forward is another bunker opened.
The fire that reached a bunker on Iwo Jima began as a supply problem thousands of miles away.
If we stop maintaining them, they stop saving lives.
On Iwo Jima, logistics was not background work. It was part of the attack.
By early March, the battle had moved into ground made to break men and machines.
When the ground stopped the tanks became fortifications of their own.
There is something under us! I cannot see it! Keep the lights low! We need this lamp by dawn! When the island denied the tank a road, the engineers built one. Sniper on the ridge! Keep them covered! It is ugly, but it will hold.
Every time the terrain slowed them, the Americans learned how to move the war forward again.
At Cushman's Pocket, the problem was no longer armor or fuel. It was geometry.
We cannot reach it from level ground. If we cannot lift the nozzle enough, we lift the whole tank. One more foot and we slide! Take the shot now! Take the shot now! That is the limit. We only get what the hill gives us.
The fire rose higher than the defenders believed possible.
It is coming from above! The cliff had not protected them. It had only delayed the lesson. Go now! They did not think we could touch them there!
Both sides were adapting, but one side was adapting faster.
The flame tanks did not end the battle in one night, but each time terrain or logistics slowed them,
These tanks are not support weapons. They are changing the fight itself.
Yes. They do in minutes what shells could not do in days. They brought more than numbers.
They brought imagination. The fortress still existed, but its certainty was gone.
The battle was entering its final week, but the hardest ground still lay ahead.
The final stand would come in the gorge. In a space less than 700 yards square, the defenders prepared to make their last stand.
This ground is the last ground!
It was not large. It did not need to be.
If we go in there without flame, we bury men.
A frontal attack into the gorge would have been a sacrifice, not a plan.
Bring every operational flame tank to the gorge. 6 ready now. 2 more still down for repair. On March 21st, the Americans gathered more flame than the Pacific War had yet seen in one place. Stay close and follow the rhythm. The gorge will punish hesitation.
These were not clean machines from a depot. They were survivors.
Tanks first. Infantry marks and follows. Engineers close what the tanks open.
The tanks would not attack in a line. They would attack like a closing hand.
Mark the cave, then get clear for the tank. We do not leave them an opening to come back through.
On the signal, all fronts move!
On March 21st, the full method was unleashed.
There was no single lane of fire. There was a wall of converging heat.
Marker on the left cave! Marker on the left cave! Take the white smoke! Fire! Seal it while the tank is still suppressing the next target!
The system repeated itself with brutal speed.
The gorge had fewer shadows to hide inside.
This is the whole method now. All of it together.
Fire led. Men followed. Engineers closed the door behind them.
Close attackers! On the flanks! Fire again! Hold your post! Keep moving! Do not stop in the bend! Officer coming out with a sword! Good God!
Bravery remained. Its power to change the battle did not.
The attack was working. It was still not clean. It was still war.
By sunset, the gorge had been entered. The final fortress was open.
8,000 gallons today. We are still taking too many.
Without the flame tanks, this line would have cost us far worse.
By nightfall, the gorge was no longer one defense. It was many dying ones.
Seal that side tunnel before dark takes it from us.
They are inside the gorge now. The line is broken.
By the end of the day, the flame tanks had done what nothing else on the island could have done so quickly.
Break the line, but I can still hear it.
Not for long, but you hear it. But you...
Victory did not arrive cleanly. It clung to the steel. Hold the light steady!
The men were not the only ones wearing down. The machines were beginning to fail with them.
We did what had to be done. That does not make it easy.
The assault had worked. The men who made it work were harder to read.
It saved Marines.
I know. I am trying to hold on to that.
There was no space between victory and preparation. The work resumed before the mind could catch up.
The tanks won ground. The memory of how they won it stayed with the men who crewed them.
On March 26th, 1945, Iwo Jima was declared secure.
36 days, not 5.
Get 6 this man, get yours to a wheelie. I have one here.
The price shocked even those who had expected a hard battle.
Of the defenders, only a tiny number survived to surrender. The tanks altered the casualty curve and the speed of advance.
They were not a novelty. They were central.
Where the battle had stalled, the flame tanks gave it motion. The fortress had resisted shells, bombs, and frontal courage. In the end, it yielded to a new system of attack. By the end of Iwo Jima, the flame tanks were no longer a question. By the end of the battle, the flame tanks were no longer an experiment. They had become the central tool in how the Americans...
When the battle ended, the numbers began telling their own story.
Over 1,000 fortified positions affected.
The tanks burned through 360,000 gallons of fuel mixture.
Estimated reduction could be around 5,000 men.
Roughly 30% of Japanese casualties were linked to flame weapons.
The reports made it measurable. The men made it real.
Where the line had frozen, the flame tanks gave it motion.
This will not stay a field improvisation.
Best single weapon of the operation.
The war on Iwo Jima ended. The influence of what was built for it did not.
We need more. Many more.
The hidden project was now too important to remain small.
At Schofield, the builders were pushed from invention into production.
The next model has to be easier to keep alive in the field.
The battlefield had now become a design laboratory.
If it worked there, it belongs in the next campaign. What had been improvised for Iwo Jima would not stay there. Tank first, infantry interval, engineer closure. This is now the method.
The secret had become a system.
From this point on, the flame tank was part of how America intended to fight bunker warfare.
By war's end, hundreds would be converted.
$354 converted by the end.
The weapon did not end at the tank. It extended backward into fuel plants and supply depots.
Keep it at 1,000 gallons by shift end.
The project was given a level of urgency reserved for the war's most important programs.
Industrial imagination only mattered because a global supply chain carried it to the battlefield.
Steel, fuel, labor, paperwork, transport. Modern war fused them all into one weapon.
The age of warfare fought by courage alone was ending.
Ideas mattered. Production made them decisive.
What Iwo Jima revealed was not just a weapon, but the full machinery of modern war. The builders went home without headlines.
Their names survived mostly in reports few people would ever read.
For many crews, the war did not stay on the island.
What did you do in the war? Drove a tank.
The battle stayed with them in the hours when the world was quiet.
They found each other again, where the machines had first been born.
I never told my family that part.
Mine would not know what to do with it.
We built it. You had to live in it.
In the end, only a few were left to remember the beginning.
The tanks saved lives. The men who used them paid in ways no report could tabulate.
The enemy's testimony told a different side of the same story.
We had prepared for many deaths, not that one.
The underground world that had shielded them became the place they most feared.
Men who would not leave for shells would leave for fire!
Some chose capture not because they stopped fearing death, but because they feared another kind of death more.
The tanks broke something deeper than the bunker walls. We believed the tunnels made us strong. The tanks turned them against us.
Depth, concrete, steel, concealment. Each strength could become a weakness once the fuel found its way inside.
The fear was not only of fire. It was of discovering that the enemy had imagined a weapon the defense had never considered.
At Iwo Jima, fear became a weapon too.
The line that began at Iwo Jima did not end with the war.
In Korea, the same principle returned. Use specialized armor to break fortified ground.
The technology changed shape, but the tactical idea endured. What had once been accepted as necessity later became a subject of deep unease.
In time, international law would narrow the accepted use of such weapons.
Says. New technologies eventually replaced open flame as the preferred answer to hardened ground.
The lesson is not the fuel. The lesson is adaptation.
Courage still mattered. But courage without adaptation could no longer decide everything.
At Iwo Jima, one age was dying.
The tanks remained in history not because they were terrible, but because they were decisive. Today, one of the tanks survives not on a battlefield, but in a museum.
Tank 434 still bears the marks of where it served.
The steel remembers in ways the plaque cannot.
This vehicle served in the Iwo Jima campaign as a flamethrower tank conversion.
The plaque can list the parts. It cannot carry the sound, the smell, or the memory.
Why would anyone make something like that? That's a very important question. Designed for defense.
Veterans often stopped longer, not to celebrate, to remember.
It is difficult to stand before the machine and feel only one thing.
In the museum, it stands somewhere between weapon and memorial.
The machine survived long enough to become a question.
"40 years later, the battlefield held a different kind of meeting.
I hated you for many years.
He hated you for many years. He could not forget what those tanks did.
That.
War made monsters of all of us.
We did what we thought we had to do.
War was setting what we had to do.
We were all just boys trying to survive.
The battle could not be undone, but its survivors could still choose what to carry forward. The island had gone quiet. The lesson had not.
In the end, the battle was won by more than courage. It was won by imagination. 8 modified Shermans did more than help win a battle. They announced a new age. Those 8 modified Sherman tanks did not just change Iwo Jima. They proved that in modern war,
Move up! Keep firing! We've almost got him! Go, go, go!